Okay, thank you very much for your time today, Haru, who is one of our solicitors here at Refuge, and he will be talking us through some commonly asked questions about the topic of abuse and being trapped potentially in your home with your abuser. So I'm going to start off with, firstly, Haru, what sort of resources are available to someone who might be experiencing that situation at this time?
I mean, I think the first thing to say is less of a resource and more of just an understanding that even though there are these restrictions in place, that everyone's locked down in their homes, that doesn't apply to people who are victims of domestic abuse and who do need to leave to escape an abuser. So that's the most important thing for anyone in that unfortunate situation, to realise that they're not stuck. They're not going to leave the house, you know, with a bag and their children or by themselves, and the police aren't going to take them back. So that's the most important thing for anyone going through this situation, to realise that they are able to leave. That then obviously leads on to the second part of, well, where do I leave to, or how do I leave, or as you said, Sarah, what resources are available to me. So there's the government are getting a bit of a bad time, but their response, but actually, you know, there are elements which they're quite good at, and that's the online resources. If you literally type in to Google or any search engine coronavirus and domestic abuse, and there's a wealth of phone numbers of assistance on the Gov.uk websites. That, of course, may not always be possible to do, because if you're in a situation where someone doesn't allow you access to a phone or to a computer, or is checking what you're looking at, that obviously may be something you can't do. So there's something which everyone should be aware of, that if you call 999 from a landline, if you have a landline, even if you don't say anything, if the handler picks up any background noise, or even if you hang up the phone, it stays connected for 45 seconds. And that's put through to a police handler who picks up the location, and they'll send someone to your house. So even if you're in a situation where you can't even sort of look at the internet or comfortably speak to a police officer or you know, emergency services line, you can just dial the number, and even if you just have to hang up, as long as you can make sure no one else uses the phone for 45 seconds, your location will be set. So that's just as a very kind of, you know, brief outline, just for everyone to be aware that there are resources which are available, and you're definitely not alone in this situation. It can definitely feel like that at the moment, but you haven't been forgotten about, and the government and individual charities are definitely there to help you.
Great, thank you very much for that. That's really helpful and informative. Our next question is moving on to sort of the legal side of things. What legal options are available to someone to protect themselves from an abuser during lockdown?
Well, obviously the first thing, as previously mentioned, is you can go to the police, and the police can start potential criminal proceedings against the abuser. The police can apply restraining orders and similar sanctions against that person. From the police aren't necessarily, if they're not willing to do that, there are routes through family courts. A very common one is to apply for a non-molestation order. Essentially, that is a restraining order within the family courts. And if you obtain that, it essentially says your abuser cannot come within a certain distance from you and or your children. And it also will stop them from contacting you by telephone or by text message or whatever you are asking, and the court deem appropriate in those circumstances. It can always seem really, really daunting to go to court. The way a non-molestation order application is set up it's really set up for people, you know, to be able to at least make the application themselves. If you don't have a lawyer, it's free of charge, and the courts do understand that someone might not be able to come with all of the necessary paperwork or understanding of how, you know, the courts and judges work. So there's a lot of leeway, and they do want to help people if they are, you know, genuinely in need of help.
Okay, thank you very much. So leading on from what you were discussing previously, how can someone go about getting a normalisation order? What would the process be like?
So, I mean, it sort of completely depends. I mean, the one option is you can contact a solicitor. So you can contact a solicitor and you can say, look, this is my situation, these are my circumstances, and a solicitor will then usually, in the current circumstances, they wouldn't call you in, but they would prepare your application for you, and then it would be submitted to a court on an urgent basis. And for these types of applications, when there's a real sort of risk of harm being done to the applicant, to the person in danger, the courts will hear you on the same day, and they will make a decision without notifying the respondent, without notifying the other party. And the reason for that is if a court, deems an application serious enough, they'll say, well, if I tell the other party before I make the order, then they might do something which a judge will regret. So that's why the other party isn't always told. In the current circumstances, even though we're in a situation of social distancing and the coronavirus restrictions, the courts are still open. You are still able to make urgent applications, and from my experience, the courts, they took a little bit of getting used to in terms of how to deal with things remotely, but they are being very helpful. Judges do want to help people in need, and so these sorts of applications, these sorts of hearings will be dealt with over the phone, and that has been done, and that has happened, and decisions are made over the telephone.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is on the list. What is an occupation order and how can I get one? And how does it differ really from a normalisation order?
So thanks for raising that. So that's another application that people in sort of danger of domestic abuse can make. An occupation order essentially stops someone from. We can edit this. An occupation order regulates who can live in a house.
Okay.
So that will either be a court order saying one person has to leave a property, or court order saying that one person has to stay in a particular part of a property. Usually it will be made, again, it is often made without notice to the party who has to leave or who has to stay in a particular part of the property, because again, if you tell them that this is coming, they may do something which the order is supposed to stop. So that's an occupation order. They are often done alongside a non-molestation order, because if someone's living in a house with their partner who's abusing them, then quite often you ask for the partner to be removed from the property and then they're stopped from coming back anywhere near the property. So those two very often go together.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very helpful. Leading on from that, speaking really about the practicalities, let's say a person is applying for a normalisation order or an occupation order, and they obviously are trapped in the same home as their abuser. Perhaps their children are there as well. What are the sort of the legal practicalities that can take place to try and remove a person from property or limit their access to the victim?
So again, that's a really good question, because lawyers like me could get bogged down and saying you can make this application, this is how the court works, but obviously you want to know how that works in practice. So let's just say, for example, over the telephone, a judge has granted an order that the person sitting on the sofa next to you needs to leave the property and go to his mother's house or something, and isn't allowed to come back until we have another court hearing. So ordinarily you would have your solicitor or the court would serve the order on the other person, so they would probably email it to them. What would be recommended is, before that happens, perhaps the police are notified, because you don't want a situation where someone receives an order telling them that their partner's gone behind their back, as they may view it, and told the court that they need to leave the house, and the court have agreed with them. So it would be a good idea to call the police and say, look, can you attend my property, because this is what's about to happen, can you remove my partner from the house as the court have ordered. And that's another very important thing to remember, is if your partner breaches a non-molestation order or an occupation order, the police do have a power of arrest. So it's not just a case of, well, I've got this piece of paper and it's somewhat worthless. If someone breaches it, or even sort of says that I'm going to breach it, you should call the police, and the police can take the necessary action against them.
Okay, thank you. That was really informative. The next question is, I already have a non-molestation occupation order in place. My abuser is breaching it during lockdown. What should I do?
So if there's a situation where an non-molestation order is being breached, the police should 100% be informed. As I said previously, non-molestation orders come with an automatic power of arrest. So if someone is breaching an order, the police need to be told and they'll take appropriate action.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is, I am in lockdown with my abuser. Am I allowed to leave my home?
Yeah, I mean, as I said at the top of this piece of this interview, the lockdown restrictions, the social distancing restrictions, within a house do not apply to victims of domestic abuse. So the person who asked the question is 100% allowed to leave their property, and they certainly should if they feel they're in danger.
And finally, just in case anyone watching this interview or generally has questions about how they might be able to make an inquiry with Greyfoods discreetly, what options are available to them?
So anyone who wants to get in touch with Greyfoods can pick up the phone and give us a call, and our solicitor always on hand to have a chat and see how we can assist, even if that needs to be done on the same day. We also have a sort of online live chat facility. So again, if it's difficult to get on the phone and speak to someone, we have a live chat facility where you can make an appointment, get some information that way, and then of course you can email in. And the most important thing is obviously with situations like this, action does often need to be taken very, very quickly, and that's something we're definitely able to do.
Great, thank you very much for your time today, Harut. I think that is all of our questions, and we hope this has been helpful. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.